So guys, one of my first memories as a little kid was drawing these Pokemon sketches in my classroom, and something weird happened because all of the kids would gather around the desk like I was performing magic. And a year later, I was selling those same drawings for £20 each. And £20 when you're just starting school as a little kid is a big deal. So I would flip those Pokemon cards, and then I would go and buy every single pack of Pokemon cards in the supermarket, and I'd flip those cards for 10 times what I paid for them. And my parents would literally think I was dealing some dodgy business because I would come home with all of this cash in my pockets. But here's where it gets crazy. Years later, I'm sitting in one of the best med schools in the country, staring at this human anatomy textbook. And all I wanted to do was just throw the book out the window. I felt lazy, unmotivated, like something was broken in me. And everyone said I was throwing my life away when I quit. They said I was being lazy, irresponsible, stupid, how so many people would kill for this opportunity. But what if I told you that this wasn't coming from laziness at all? What if everything you've been told about hard work is backwards? See, we've been programmed with this idea that if something feels hard, if you're struggling, and if you need to force yourself, that means you're on the right path, as if that suffering equals success. But here's what no one talks about. When I was drawing these Pokemon sketches and selling these cards, I wasn't working hard, I was playing. It felt like breathing, something that just came so natural, easy. But when I was training to be a doctor, every page on that textbook felt like I was pushing this massive boulder uphill. And this is where I believe everyone gets it wrong. They think the difference is discipline or motivation or willpower. But what if the real difference is that you're playing the wrong game entirely? Let me explain. Let me take you back to when I figured this out. So picture this. At school, I was an A-star student getting top grades with a scholarship for my artwork and trophies and medals for all these athletic competitions that I lined up on my shelf. And everyone around me would tell me that I'm gifted and that my teachers were proud and everyone was impressed. But they all said the same thing, which is art won't pay your bills and sports is just a hobby, and that I have to be realistic and be a doctor. So I did what every smart kid does, and I ignored that voice in my head, which was screaming, "This isn't you," and I just continued to push forward. And that got me into med school, where I started studying to save lives. Except the irony was, I was dying inside. And here's what's messed up though. When I was training for all of these athletic competitions, I'd wake up at 5 a.m. without any alarm, and I would train harder than anyone else. And that's not because I had discipline, it just didn't feel like work. But when I had to study for a medical exam, I needed 5 alarms, 4 cups of coffee, and then I would still procrastinate until 2 a.m. the night before. So the question is, was I lazy, or was my brain trying to tell me something that everyone else was just too scared to say? And so one day, I had this revelation, sitting in this med school library, surrounded by all of these future doctors, all grinding away, and then suddenly something just clicked. And I look around me and I notice something really strange. Half of the students were looking miserable, like me, but the other half were completely absorbed. They were fascinated by the textbooks that they were reading, and it felt like torture to me. And so what felt like torture to me was exciting to them. That's when I realized the most dangerous lie that we've been sold. We think success is about forcing yourself to do things that you hate. We have to worship the grind, the hustle, the struggle. But I urge you to see success as finding the game where work doesn't feel like work. So stick with me. If you think about it, every massive success story, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, they're not successful because they forced themselves harder than everyone else. They're successful because they found a game where their obsession looks like hard work to everyone else. And so, to use a basketball reference, when Kobe Bryant shot basketballs until 2 a.m., was that discipline, or was he just playing his favorite game? And here's the thing that no one wants to admit. I don't think you're lazy. You're just playing someone else's game. And so I came up with this unconventional solution where I did something that everyone said was insane. I quit this long path of becoming a doctor after this 5-year degree. And at the time, my parents, my friends, my teachers, they all thought I lost my mind. They all said that I was throwing my future away. And here's what happened next. I eventually stumbled into a commission-only role. There was no safety net. And suddenly, the same person who couldn't stay awake reading these medical textbooks is now suddenly working 16-hour days without noticing. But why is that? I think it's because selling reminded me of selling these Pokemon cards and these sketches when I was a little kid. It was just a game that I understood in my bones. And here's where most people mess up when they try to find their passion. They think it's about finding something easy, as something that never challenges you. But I don't think that's it at all. See, a few years ago, I stupidly lost all of my life savings in some crypto scams. And when my first business attempts failed, I had to learn every aspect of my business from scratch. And those situations were hard, really hard. But it was a different kind of hard. It's like when I was younger, training for these athletic competitions, the pain had a purpose. The struggle made sense because that was my passion. So here is the secret no one tells you. There are two types of hard in life. There's the pushing the boulder uphill kind of hard, where every step feels wrong, where you need so much external motivation just to show up. Then there's the training for the Olympics kind of hard, where although it's brutal, something inside that Olympic athlete wants it anyway. It's their passion. So I call this game theory. Let me break this down with something I learned in my first business. I was running these VIP events, and that included a lot of late nights. And I noticed something weird. Some people could work those environments for decades and they love it. The late nights, the chaos, the constant social energy, it fed them. But me, after a while, I just felt drained. And that wasn't because I was weak or lazy, it just wasn't my game. But when I switched into a completely different business model, I used the same skills, but in a different game. And everything changed. The conversions, the management, the scaling, it just all clicked. But here's what's really wild. When I was in school, I was such a perfectionist. That same trait that helped me get my top grades was killing me in business. Because in business, perfectionism is often the enemy of progress. So I had to literally rewire my brain. And it's not because perfectionism is bad, it's just because I was playing a new game with old rules. And this is what most people never understand. Every game has different rules. And if you're playing the wrong game, even your strengths become weaknesses. If you think about it like this, if you put a fish in a tree climbing competition, it's going to look pretty lazy compared to the monkeys. But if you throw that same fish in water, it's a different story. And here is the plot twist. You know what the biggest trap is? It's not playing the wrong game. It's playing a game that's almost right. See, when something is completely wrong for you, like studying to become a doctor was for me, your body just rebels. It just rejects it. And you can't ignore that. You're forced to make a change. But when something feels 70% right, that is dangerous. Because when something is 70%, you can convince yourself to stick with it forever. And I see this all of the time. People are in jobs that are pretty good and relationships that are okay. And so they live lives that are just okay. But the problem with that is that they're not miserable enough to change, but they're not alive enough to thrive in what they're doing. I hope I'm making sense. What's crazy is that they think they're lazy because they're not excited about their 70% okay life. And so they beat themselves up for not being grateful, for wanting more. But what if that restlessness isn't laziness? What if it's your soul screaming that you're capable of more? See, I learned something crucial when I kept wanting to jump to new business opportunities even after finding my success. The perfectionist in me just wanted to master everything. But the entrepreneur in me realized something. The longer I played the right game, the more unfair the advantage becomes. The longer that you play the right game, the more unfair your advantage becomes. I could jump into a new opportunity and make more money faster, but if I stayed in my own business game, if I learned the secrets that only time can teach in the same game, That is how you build something that no one can take away. Let me give you this mindset shift. Here is a challenge for you. Stop trying to be disciplined. Stop trying to force motivation. Stop reading all of these productivity books and watching videos about morning routines. Instead, ask yourself one question. What game am I actually playing? Because here is what I've learned after losing all of my savings in crypto and building it back in a real business. Success isn't about working harder, it's about finding the game where your weird obsession, or at least what people view to be your obsession, is actually an advantage. So the story of when I was a kid drawing those Pokemon sketches, that wasn't discipline. That was obsession by other people's counts. And when I was training to be a doctor and I couldn't focus on the anatomy books, that wasn't laziness. I was just in the wrong room. When I lost all of my life savings in crypto scams, but chose to keep going and start a business, that wasn't tough. I just finally found my game. But look, I don't want to ramble. I know what you're thinking, but I don't know what my game is. Good. That means you're ready to stop pretending and start exploring. Because here's the truth that no one wants to hear. Most people die never finding their game. They'd rather spend 40 years at something that they hate, in a job that they hate, but what if you could identify your real game in just 30 days? What if there are specific signs and patterns and little breadcrumbs that you've been leaving your whole life that point to exactly what you should be doing? In fact, in my next video, I'm going to show you something I call the breadcrumb method, whereby I trace back through all of my childhood obsessions and think of all of my easiest wins, but also my most painful failures to find the patterns that everyone else has missed. And I'm going to show you why your biggest weakness might actually be your brain protecting you from the wrong path, and why the thing that people criticize you for might be your biggest business advantage. But here's the thing. This only works if you're ready to admit something scary, which is maybe, just maybe, you've been playing someone else's game your entire life. And if you're ready for that level of truth, subscribe to the channel, because in a future video, I'm going to show you exactly how to find those little breadcrumbs. And trust me, once you've seen them, you can't unsee them. But the question is, are you brave enough to look? But remember, you're not lazy, you're not broken, you're not unmotivated. You're just playing the wrong damn game. And it's time to find yours.